morning, pineapple. Looking very good, very nice. Good 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 morning, pineapple. Looking very good, very Good morning, pineapple. Looking very good, very nice. Good morning, pineapple. Looking very good, very nice.
Así que el cambio de régimen, además de ilegal, es inmoral. Y aquí no lograrán ni colonizar, ni esclavizar, ni a Venezuela, ni a América del Sur, ni a nuestra América. Y si algún día tocan a Venezuela, toda la América se levantará por nosotros.
Acaban de explotar el otro de este.
So now let's go to reaction that's pouring in from world leaders this morning who are waking up to a new reality with what happened overnight.
Good morning, pineapples. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. We're back. It's good to be back. We took a short break. We went to Winter Park, Colorado, had a beautiful time. Thank you so much to my mother-in-law, Verna, who helped make it all happen. Snow, mountains, fresh air, and apparently, while we were gone, the world decided to absolutely lose its mind. So thank you also for letting me step away long enough to kind of see all this clearly again, because sometimes distance gives you perspective, and perspective is exactly what we need this morning. Here is what we're doing today. First, we're going to walk through the new year and the new laws that quietly went into effect while no one was watching. So some of them are ridiculous, some of them are dangerous, and a few of them are surprisingly actually pretty libertarian, actually nice, good. We're going to talk about states trying to parent your kids, states trying to regulate artificial intelligence, they barely understand, states taxing you and calling it virtue. And we're going to apply one simple test. Does this expand freedom? Does it target real harm? Or does it just make the government feel important? Then we're going to zoom out, get the bigger picture here, because beyond the laws, there is a bigger story, the economy. And the economy right now is strong and deeply strange. I mean, markets are optimistic. Investors are confident. Artificial intelligence is reshaping everything. And yet normal people feel unease. Hiring is uneven. Costs are stubborn. And the entire system kind of feels like it's balanced on a nice knife's edge between breakthrough and blunder. We're going to connect the dots between policy, technology, and the choices being made right now that are going to shape 2026. And then we're going to get to the story that everybody's talking about this morning. The United States, under Donald Trump, launched a precision operation and captured Nicolás Maduro. Now, that is not a sentence that I expected to say coming back from the break, but it happened. And I'm going to spend a full segment at 8 a.m. laying out what was done, how it was done, why it was justified, why I support it from a libertarian nationalist perspective. We're going to talk about sovereignty, law enforcement, narco-states, and the difference between decisive action and endless war. And then at 8:30 a.m. this morning, we are joined by Mylene Salavarria, host of Cafecito Libre, right here on the For Liberty Network. She's going to help us understand what this moment means for Latin America, for the region, and for the future. So this is a big show, not because of theatrics, but because the stakes in this conflict are real. It's a new year. There are new laws, new economic realities, and foreign policy realities in a world that is moving faster, whether we like it or not. So get comfortable, share the show with your friends, and let's wake up America. It's time to begin. You guys ready? Good. Don't forget, we do have our bonus content available for you in the new year. If we raise $100 on the Wake Up America show today, we have got for you a splendiferous mini documentary available for you to unlock today if we raise $100 in Rumble Rants or in purchases at forlibertyshop.com. That's the number for libertyshop.com. If we hit $150, we'll play the Great Grift Off, Liberty Loot Live. Can't you love to see it? And then if we raise $200 today, we're going to play a little game of show and tell. So I will share with you an object of great interest to you, to libertarians, and tell you the story, the backstory behind it. So get those Rumble Rants in early and often, like Kermode Bear has already done. Thank you, Kermode and Entropy Nomad and some others I think I saw. And I'm very grateful to you all for all of your financial support. As Brad was saying over in the chat, we do now have new K-Cups and instant coffee available for those who had asked for it over at forlibertyshop.com. Don't forget to sign up for a subscription to it, and we'll be very grateful. So welcome back. We're glad to have everybody here. Make sure you click the like button as well. Happy New Year to everybody. And of course, as always, in America, politicians rang in the new year by quietly passing a pile of new laws while you were distracted by fireworks or football and leftover dip. So this is kind of one of the great traditions of government. They wait until January 1st because no one is paying attention, right? So let's do what they hate. Let's pay attention, okay? Across the country, states passed new rules, new mandates, and some new schemes. Some are ridiculous or some are dangerous, and a few, shockingly, were pretty libertarian. So let's go through them. We're going to apply a simple test this morning. Does this law expand individual freedom? Does it target real harm? Or does it just make the government and the politicians feel important? So let's start with Virginia. So Virginia decided this year that it is now your child's screen time parent. Yeah, the state moved to cap social media use for minors and push age verification requirements onto platforms. Now, listen, guys, I'm not defending social media addiction. I probably have a little bit of an addiction, though I do have to use it for work. I'm defending reality because parents are supposed to parent, not bureaucrats. When the state says, we'll handle screen time for you, what they really mean is, we need everyone to upload an ID and to track where you're visiting and how long. And age verification always becomes identity tracking, always. Today, of course, it's just for the kids. Who could argue for the kids? We have to protect the kids. And tomorrow, it's going to be everyone, right? And this is how surveillance grows, not with jackboots, right? It always starts with think of the children. I mean, congratulations, Virginia. You just turned the internet into the DMV with emojis. Now let's look at Illinois. Illinois decided it's time to regulate artificial intelligence in hiring. Employers must disclose AI use, prove it doesn't discriminate, and they have to generate new paperwork to satisfy regulators who barely understand this technology, of course. So here is the split decision on this one, all right? So transparency is fine, but compliance creep is not. And this is how innovation is slowed down, not because the tech itself is bad, but because the forms that you have to fill out never end. HR departments are now required to consult a lawyer, a data scientist, possibly a priest, to make sure that the algorithm is pure of heart. Illinois didn't fix discrimination. They just created a new industry of consultants and a bureaucracy on top of it to get paid by taxpayer dollars. And Utah is next. Utah implemented marked IDs for certain DUI offenders. And I'm going to shock you. I don't hate this, right? You should target criminals and try and deter repeat offenders on this to protect the public. And this is kind of what the law enforcement is supposed to do. But here's the warning. Scarlet letter policies have a way of spreading. First, it's DUI offenders, then it's unpaid fines, and then it's opinions somebody doesn't like, right? If you're going to mark people, you better be damn sure that it stays narrow, right? Your wallet should not become a social credit report. Now let's look at Hawaii. Hawaii introduced a new green fee on tourists to fund the climate programs. The translation is that they found a captive audience and wrapped a tax in a moral lecture. Right? They love cities and states love punishing tourism with taxes. Right? But it's not environmentalism. It's really just indulgences. You fly to paradise, and the state says that'll be extra for the planet. Right? It's not a carbon. It's kind of like a carbon offset with a lei, right? So Washington State, turning to Washington, raised its minimum wage again. Here's what happens next. Prices are going to rise. Hours are going to shrink. And the self-checkout kiosk is going to get a promotion. Congratulations. You just gave the robot a raise. California rolled out state-branded insulin. I kid you not. They say it's going to lower prices, and they say it's going to increase access. That has yet to be seen. We'll keep an eye on that one. But government as brand manager always carries risk, right? Big government is now a startup. And of course, it's competing with anyone in the free market who's trying to provide insulin at a decent cost. So now they're going to get priced out of the market because the government can fix their own prices and make it more difficult for people to compete, of course. And now another issue that we're looking at this morning in the new year, right to repair laws. And this one is easy, right? If I bought it, I should be allowed to open it. Property rights matter. End of story. What do you think about it? Love to hear your thoughts. You can send us a text at 573-319-1586. What are your thoughts on right to repair? Let us know. You can drop a comment as well in the chat. Now let's talk a little bit about the national piece, because I think this is probably the biggest question mark that we might have when it comes to how we feel about things like regulation. So this is where I support Donald Trump and his executive action to keep AI regulation from being sort of balkanized. This conversation that we're having about artificial intelligence, whether the states should be allowed to set their own regulations. So in my opinion, AI is interstate commerce by definition. I mean, data crosses borders instantly. Computer information, it crosses borders instantly. Innovation crosses borders instantly. This is the kind of thing that the Constitution's Commerce Clause was designed for, to stop the 50 states from tearing the national market apart with 50 contradictory rule books. I mean, libertarian nationalism means this: a strong national framework, weak micromanagement, right? Protect the commons, prevent sabotage, let people build. I mean, 50 states cannot be allowed to strangle the future one regulation at a time. So that's the landscape. New year, new laws, same political instincts, some good, some terrible, some hilarious. But laws are only part of this story, because when you zoom out, there is kind of a bigger question looming over all of this. And that's, what kind of economy are we actually walking into in 2026? Because on paper, things look strong, but in real life, things feel kind of strange, right? Markets are confident. Technology is accelerating, and yet a lot of people feel uneasy. So for the second segment today, we're going to kind of zoom out and talk about the economy, the contradictions, the optimism, and the risks that are defining this new year. We appreciate everybody tuning in to the Wake Up America show today. Welcome back. I'm Austin Peterson, the host of the Wake Up America show. If you haven't already, please click the like button. Click the like button. And if you are watching the Wake Up America show for the very first time today, click the follow button as well. We'd love to have you come back and join us. The show schedule is Mondays through Fridays, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. So set an alarm, come back and join us all 5 days of the week if you want to stay informed about what's going on in the world and in the United States specifically. I'm a libertarian nationalist. That means I love my country, I love freedom, and I want to try and protect it to the best of my ability. If that's what you stand for, then you're in the right place. There's a lot of news happening today. We won't be able to cover everything. I wish I had time to talk about Dan Bongino, the former deputy director of the FBI, coming back to Rumble. Honestly, I think it's going to be great for the platform. So my hot take is this. Welcome back, Dan Bongino. Even though I think his show might be the same time as mine, which means womp womp, I might be losing some audience. Thormock over in the chat says, I repair and rebuild my own garbage. I own it. I have that right. Now you say I repair and rebuild my own garbage. Did you mean garage? I'm pretty sure you meant garage. I could be wrong. I repair and rebuild my own garbage. Maybe you did mean garbage. I don't know. Thormock also asking the good question, saying, can't they just have AI fill out the forms? Well, the problem with that is then you create an infinite feedback of forms, because you have to, if you have AI fill out the bureaucrat's forms, then you have to fill out more forms to show that the AI, and creating an never-ending loop of forms. It's never going to stop. Never-ending, infinite forms. We are going to talk about Maduro this morning, starting at 8 a.m. Central Time. So about 40 minutes from now, we're going to switch to the Venezuela topic. We've got Maylene Salavarria, who's going to join us this morning at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. She's going to talk this morning to us about the Venezuela situation from the view of a Cuban expat. She fled Cuba, made it to the United States to become an American citizen. She's now one of the hosts of her own show that will be launching soon right here on the For Liberty Network. And she's going to talk to us a little bit today about the deposition, the toppling of former communist leader, Nicolás Maduro, who was black bagged overnight by Delta Force. In the last couple of days, we've been following the news, and it's just been unbelievably fantastic for those of you who hate communism and love liberty. But I am getting a lot of crap from my fellow libertarians who call this an interventionist war, tell us that this is a disgusting, terrible attack on human rights and on liberty itself. I have a point of view on that, and we are going to share it. I got into it a little bit with Chase Oliver, the former libertarian presidential candidate from the last cycle, who was, of course, calling me a neocon for my views on this one, which if agreeing with Javier Milei on this makes me a neocon. Call me whatever you want. Just don't call me soft on communism, because I'm not. We have to be hard on communism, and we are going to talk about that this morning. But the best part about all of this is all of the Venezuelans who have been logging on telling American leftists to kill themselves, essentially.
Y le pido a todos que tengan fe, no sé dónde iré a salir, pero les pido a todos que tengan fe, que no se dejen llenar la cabeza de que los gringos solo quieren el petróleo y los gringos solo quieren sus riquezas. O sea, y a esas personas les pregunto, ¿qué creen ellos que querían los rusos y los chinos durante tanto tiempo? ¿La receta de la arepa? Imposible.
I have no idea what he said, but it sounded good. Oh my gosh, yes. My response to people citing international law in relation to Venezuela.
You win? You have a problem with that? You know what you should do? You should sanction me. Sanction me with your army. Oh, wait a minute. You don't have an army. I guess that means you need to shut the fuck up. That's what I do if I don't have no army. I would fuck up. Shut the fuck up. That's right. Hopian. Now, I think I'm going to take orders from an African. You might speak 16 languages, but you're going to need them when you in Times Square selling fake hats. I know Gucci when I see it, nigga. I'm rich.
Oh, yes. I heard a gringo, and I heard arepas. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. It's nice to see over 100 people watching us live this morning. I am so grateful to have you here today on the Wake Up America show. Happy New Year. We are back, and we are so excited to get this show on the road. We've got an incredible show for you today here in just a few minutes. We're going to talk a little bit about the paradox of the economy, how people feel about the economy versus how the economy is actually performing. We're going to talk about wages, jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So make sure you click that like button. At 8 a.m. Central Time and 8:30 a.m. Central Time, we're going to be talking about Nicolás Maduro. We're going to be talking about Venezuela, to communism, interventionism, libertarianism, foreign policy. It's going to be a whole AP class on foreign policy and politics with a great interview from Mylene Salavarria starting at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. So you don't want to miss it. Make sure that you stick around for the whole second hour. If you have errands or tasks, things that you have to do this morning, and you want to know what's the best time to come back at 8 a.m. Central. So if you need to get those things done, get them done now and set an appointment to come back at 8 a.m. Central Time. It's 7:23 a.m. Central Time right now. So come back in about 40 minutes if you're looking for the Maduro talk. We're going to discuss foreign policy in about 40 minutes. Right now, we're going to focus a little bit on the economy. So let's take a look at what we just talked about. We talked about these new laws and these new rules, new regulations, and now we're going to zoom out because the real story of the new year is not just what politicians passed, right? It's kind of what the economy is also quietly signaling right now. And the signal is this: the economy, surprisingly, is strong and deeply strange. So we're going to start big picture here globally, right? The big economic outlooks for 2026 are in, and the consensus is oddly kind of optimistic, right? Growth is expected to continue. Markets are confident. Capital is still flowing. But every serious analyst keeps circling the same two words: artificial intelligence and risk. Right? AI is kind of driving these productivity gains. It's reshaping industries. It's attracting massive investment. And that's good, but it's also creating a classic bubble condition. Right? There are these huge valuations for NVIDIA and AMD, right? There's narrative investing going on. Companies are priced on promise rather than profit. Sounds like a bubble, right? This isn't new, right? Every technological revolution kind of comes with this euphoria. But the difference is this time is that AI is not a toy. It is a foundational infrastructure, which means that if policymakers screw this up, the consequences are much bigger. And this is why I just spent time kind of defending national cohesion on AI, right? You cannot build the next economic engine with 50 different rule books fighting each other. Now, let's bring it home, because the U.S. economy in 2025 was one of the weirdest on record. Growth stayed strong, spending stayed high, and markets stayed pretty calm, but yet hiring slowed, inflation refused to die, and the data got really muddy. We had months where no one trusted the numbers because the government itself was partially shut down. So what did we get? This paradox economy. Output was up, jobs were uneven, wages were pressured, confidence in the economy was shaky, right? This is the kind of environment that really makes politicians dangerous, because they see strong GDP and assume everything is fine, but normal people feel something different. They feel the costs rising faster than pay. They feel instability. They feel like they're just one shock away from trouble, or just one paycheck, or one car repair away from financial ruin. This isn't collapse, but it is kind of a fragility. And now Wall Street, of course, somehow is cheerful, right? Major firms are projecting another year of market gains because Wall Street's earnings are solid, rate cuts are expected, and because, well, capital has nowhere else to go, right? The United States is the best place for your money if you're going to invest somewhere, right? One of the interesting things that has come out of the Venezuela story is the question of the oil. Well, oil is sitting around approximately $60 a barrel, which makes it not as profitable for investors to say, hey, we want to spend a lot of money to go digging for oil and refining oil in Venezuela. So that you would think, oh, well, then that's a problem, right? If we went to Venezuela for oil, well, does that mean then that now it's not going to be profitable for investors? If you had to invest in Venezuelan oil versus oil in the Permian Basin in the United States, which one would you invest in? If you wanted to have a safer bet, you're probably going to be better off investing in the Permian Basin in the United States, right? That is the safer bet. And here's the tension, right? Because the valuations are stretched, right? Not insane, not .com level stretched, but stretched enough that any serious disruption could snap the mood. And what would that disruption be, right? Policy chaos, fragmented AI rules, trade shocks, overregulation that chokes innovation, or government pretending that productivity gains can replace real jobs, right? Wall Street is kind of betting that the adults are going to be in charge, that innovation is going to be allowed, that regulation is going to make sense, that growth because of AI will be real. And that is a big bet, right? And this is kind of why these three stories belong together. The economy is not weak. It is transforming. AI is kind of changing how value is created. I mean, jobs are changing shape. Markets are pricing a future that assumes competence. Stephanie and I were chatting a little bit with someone that we met when we were in Colorado. And she was this young lady was a marketer for an engineering firm. And her job was to select the images from the templates that they gave her to make the marketing materials for their engineering firm, but she doesn't make any images herself. She does use AI to some extent, but she doesn't actually make images. They have a graphic designer as well at their firm. And I asked her if she had any ability to use Photoshop or to create images, and she said no. And I kind of thought to myself, that's probably not going to be. If I were her, I would be looking at how to use AI to make images or to make incredible videos like these.
Direto de Caracas, chegou Madurinho, o prisioneiro mais procurado do mundo, com recompensa de 50 milhões de dólares e muita história para contar. Traga ele algemado numa missão radical da Delta Force.
Señor cobarde, venga por mí, aquí lo espero en Miraflores, no se tarde en llegar, cobarde.
Com bandeirinha, comida de cela e algemas de verdade. Leve pra base, interrogue e mostre quem manda. O Madurinho, o prisioneiro mais procurado do mundo.
I really want that doll now. If you could make videos like that with using AI, you're not going to have a problem having a job. And the danger for the economy in 2026, it's not capitalism that's the danger. The danger is political stupidity, right? Libertarian nationalism means a strong focus on protecting markets, right? It means protecting the conditions that allow them to function. National coherence, predictable rules, limited interference. Let builders build. Let workers adapt. Let innovation run, right? Do not strangle the future because the past makes you nervous. So that is where we are, right? A strong economy, a strange economy, and an economy that's balanced between breakthrough and blunder. And we're going to talk this morning a little bit about that. When what happens when the United States decides not to drift, but to act. We're grateful to have all of our friends like John Knox, Will Run Riot, Booty Sweat, Drew Van Runkle, Andy Opperman, Entropy Nomad, and so many others hanging out in the chat. Hi, St. Selma. Hello, SeaWorld girl. Happy New Year to everybody. Welcome back to the Wake Up America show. Nelson is here with us. Hi, guys. We're going to be talking this morning about Nicolás Maduro and the invasion of Venezuela. Well, hardly an invasion, you might say, but we're going to talk about that this morning with Maylene Salavarria. She'll be joining us this morning at 8:30 a.m. Central Time, so she's going to talk to us about this from the sort of view as a Cuban expat, as someone who fled Cuba, fled a communist regime, and came to the United States, became an American citizen, and is going to be joining us this morning live at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. Maylene Salavarria's show is going to be launching here on the For Liberty Network this year very soon. We're very excited to have a brand new show on the network where you'll be able to get Maylene Salavarria's view on things directly. For now, we have her on the show, and we can't wait to see her launch her own podcast very soon here on the Wake Up America show. Steelbringer, America. We're grateful to have all of our viewers and friends, and thank you for your financial support. If you'd like to help unlock the bonus content like Steelbringer this morning, take a little visit over to the Grift Shop at thegriftshop.com. We've got so many incredible new products that we're dropping all of the time now over at forlibertyshop.com that you might have missed. A lot of new exciting things that you may not have seen before. Our Javier Milei shot glasses, party bundles, ringing the new year with an untaxed whiskey glass. Now, I know what you're going to say. You probably paid the tax on your whiskey. Well, what a great gift. If you still haven't tried Founding Flavors coffee, you are missing out on a delicious Rebel Roast. Over at forlibertyshop.com, our Founding Flavors coffee keeps the revolution alive and kicking and very sharply awake. If you haven't tried any of our coffees yet, Brad and I put together this coffee bundle for you that we think you will love to give you a nice little discount on the my top three favorites at forlibertyshop.com. When you visit the website and you go to the coffee page, you'll find my top three favorite coffees here. Jeffersonian Java, Franklin's Electric Elixir, and Thomas's Painkiller, available in a nice little bundle pack. Don't forget when you're selecting this, guys, to decide whether you want ground or whether you want whole bean. I'm the type of person who likes to put my coffee through the buzzsaw nice and fresh before I drink it, so I like to order it whole bean, but most people tend to enjoy it ground. Just make sure that you have those selected and then click add to cart and check out this morning with a nice little bundle. If you haven't tried Founding Flavors coffee just yet, this is the best way to do it, to get introduced, to choose whichever one you love. So that way you guys can get an idea for which one you want to subscribe to monthly. If you haven't already, make sure you click the like button. And if today's your first time watching the Wake Up America show, click the follow button as well. We'd love to have you become a regular guest on the Wake Up America show. When you click the follow button, you will get a notification in the mornings whenever we go live.
We're bombing Venezuela right now. It is 2:35 a.m. and Pete Kegsbro, fucking cosplay G.I. Joe, is literally bombing Venezuela. You guys didn't stop them when they were bombing boats in the ocean. You didn't stop them when they fucking took a tanker off the coast of Venezuela like a bunch of fucking pirates. You guys didn't say shit when they bombed Nigeria less than 2 weeks ago. What the fuck are you guys doing? We are the terrorists. We are exporting error to the rest of the world. What the fuck is it going to take for you people to remove this dementia-ridden patient who needs to be in a fucking padded cell at this point? We're bombing...
Oh my God. And now if you thought it couldn't get any better, it does get better. It does. It gets so much better.
Potentially in league with the cartels operating along our border. All of these actions were in gross violation of the core principles of American foreign policy, dating back more than 2 centuries, and not anymore. All the way back, it dated to the Monroe Doctrines, and the Monroe Doctrine is a big deal, but we've superseded it by a lot, by a real lot. They now call it the Donroe Document. I don't know. It's Monroe Doctrine. We sort of forgot about it. It was very important, but we forgot about it. We don't forget about it anymore. Under our night.
How does he do that? Now, first of all, how does he come up with such incredible names right away? And then how does Marco Rubio just not bust out laughing listening to something like that? I mean, I would be cracking up. Thank you to Joel Ledamore gifting those subs out there today, helping to unlock that bonus content. Donald Trump and Javier Milei, great liberators.
Muy emocionada llorando. ¿Cómo se siente? Cuéntanos por qué llora.
Felicidad, tantos años esperar esto, Señor. hermano mayor y fue fuerte, hermano. Secuestraron a mis hermanos, eso fue fuerte. Y doy gracias a Dios por todo esto, porque ha sido fuerte.
Muchas gracias. ¿Su nombre?
Yajaira.
¿De qué parte de Venezuela es?
De Maracaibo.
De Maracaibo. ¿Y qué le dice a las personas que están viendo en este momento toda esta emoción de los venezolanos, a los venezolanos que han sido el centro de atención de las noticias, tanto por lo que ocurre en Venezuela como por el éxodo de los venezolanos, los migrantes venezolanos?
Fuerza, que sí se puede, que tuviera paz y fe, como yo tengo 27 años esperando esto, que sí se puede, que tengan esperanza de todo, que vamos a ser un país libre, próspero y que todos vamos a salir a disfrutar este momento.
Sí se puede, or as Dr. Jill Biden once said, sí se puede. Yes, we can. Now, not all Americans were as happy. Many Americans were not happy. Many leftists were unhappy with the invasion of Venezuela and the capturing of communist leader Nicolás Maduro. Many right-wingers were also upset about this.
Ben Shapiro was just sitting there being interviewed by Megyn Kelly and said something. He said something like, well, Tucker Carlson's, for Maduro, the communist leader of Venezuela, who I guess were on the way to killing or something, forcing out, regime changing him. And he defended Maduro. It didn't, actually. And Megyn Kelly says, well, Tucker said in his show that Maduro, most people didn't know this, whatever his many faults, I wouldn't hire him as an economist, okay? But whatever his many faults, has the most socially conservative country probably in the hemisphere. So Venezuela is just a fact. I mean, I didn't make this up. I'm not in charge of Venezuela. Just noticing that Venezuela has banned pornography, banned abortion, banned gay marriage, banned sex changes, and banned usury. You don't have credit cards with 40% interest in Venezuela. Okay. Ben Shapiro responded this way.
Tucker's made the point, I'm not going to here to be Tucker's defender, but he's made the point that Maduro is culturally conservative.
Who gives a shit? The guy's a communist dictator. Everyone in his country is eating dog. He's shipping fentanyl to the United States to kill Americans. Why do I give a shit whether he's anti-LGBTQ rights?
Who gives a shit? I do. I'm not moving to Venezuela.
Why not?
Maduro.
Why not?
But I care about that. Why wouldn't I care about that? I've got kids. First of all, I'm against abortion. Sorry, unpopular. I feel that way. I think it's really sad. I would personally become poorer to end abortion, voluntarily become poorer to end abortion in the United States. That's not a choice. Don't want to become poor, but I would because I care about it. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're offended that I do, but I care about it. Lots of people care about it. I don't think pornography is good. That really hurts people. I don't think pretending that the sexes are the same is good. And you claimed that you didn't think it was good, but it turns out, quote,
So I guess the view is we'll own nothing. We'll be happy. We shouldn't have as many dolls for Christmas. You'll be poor. Feudalism is good. Not only are you going to have to live in a poor feudalist country, is what Tucker Carlson is advocating for. We're going to have to live in a poor feudalist country. You also can't have any fun vices. You can't do any drugs. You can't be gay or have any drag shows, even for adults. You'll be eating dog, but at least the gay marriage is banned. I guess. What the hell happened to him? Welcome to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. It's nice to see those numbers climbing over there on rumble.com this morning. If you're not watching us on Rumble, you're really missing out. Truly the best audience is at rumble.com/AP for Liberty. I know you're watching us over on YouTube or on X and you prefer that platform perhaps, but you just really don't know what it's like until you join the Liberty crew over in the comment section at rumble.com/AP for Liberty. Let the gays eat dog, says Arvolt. I'm glad Tucker cares about all that shit because I don't. What are your thoughts on this? You can send us a text if you'd like at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. We're well on our way to unlocking the bonus content this morning. It looks like we've raised $37. We have 3 different bonus content levels. If we raise $100 on the Wake Up America show this morning, then you will unlock today's mini documentary to watch instead of commercials when we have Mylene Salabaria coming up here in a little bit. If we raise $150, either in purchases at the shop or in Rumble Rant donations, then $150 will unlock the game show mode over on the show this morning, meaning you guys will get to play for real prizes today. If we raise $200 on the Wake Up America show, we're going to do a little game of show and tell, which we haven't gotten to do yet. Brand new for the new year, and I hope that you guys will appreciate it. It's still Christmas time, by the way, reminds us. JJ4884 reminds us. January 7th is Julian Christmas. Very true. Luke Sacker says Tucker needs an intervention, and it will be funny, John Knox says, if they make Maduro and P. Diddy share a cell. Yeah, I heard that they sent him to the Diddy to Maduro. I hear you like oil. Me too. Steelbringer says, well, I care about abortion, but communism certainly kills babies and them and then some, though. That is true. Communism kills lots of babies. So if you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Please click the like button. We'll be grateful to have you come back and join us every Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. So if you click the follow button, then you will get a notification when we go live. This show, again, is 5 days a week, and we'd love to have you be a regular guest. Again, if you have a question for me or you have a question for any of our guests, you can text the show line 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. Did I say Happy New Year, Luke Sacker? I didn't mean to. Happy New Year. Luke Sacker says that the oil in Venezuela is sour and heavy. Yeah, Steffi and I were looking this up over the vacation. We were looking at what kind of oil the United States really needs for our economy, because we have a lot of heavy trucks and diesel vehicles. Is that heavy crude is the type of oil that the United States needs. And the United States tends to produce more light, sweet oil. And that light, sweet, I don't know, why do they call it sweet? Is it sweet? Does it taste good? Are you drinking oil? What's wrong with you? But the light, sweet oil tends to be the kind of oil that is used more in European economies. And then the heavy crude is the type that the American economy needs, because we have a lot more big trucks and diesel engines. Is that about right? Can somebody fact check me on this one? I hope I'm not talking on my ass on this one. It's because 120 people are listening over on Rumble and other places. Maybe he went to that Leering Center. Oh, Happy New Lear. We're leering this year. Happy New Lear. Yes, we went to the Leering Center. Glad to have you all here, children. We're all going to be leering this morning together on the Wake Up America show.
So whoever the fuck doesn't like the United States of America, may God bless you. But fuck you at the same time.
Sorry for the language.
If you don't like the United States of America, go back to the countries that we the fuck from, and you'll see how much you appreciate the United States of America.
That's Pitbull. Mr. Worldwide. These countries where we're from, go back to them. If you don't like the United States of America, go back to those countries where we're from. You'll appreciate the United States. You damn right, Pitbull. You damn right, Mr. Worldwide.
The American president is a coward. Come get me. I'm waiting.
Well, how about that? Quicker than DoorDash.
Sometimes you just shouldn't ask for it. And did you see all the videos of Nicolás Maduro saying, come and get me in Miraflores? You shouldn't talk to Donald Trump like that, honestly. You shouldn't do that. All right, let's hit the news, guys. This is one of those moments in history where people kind of pretend that nothing just happened, right? But something very big just happened. The United States, under Donald Trump, removed Nicolás Maduro from power and took him into custody. Communism takes the L. That sentence alone would have sounded unthinkable to most people, even a week ago. And yet, here we are. This wasn't a speech. This was not a sanction. This was not a strongly worded letter from Hans Brix of the United Nations. This was action. And I want to be very clear about my position. I support this operation, not because I want endless wars, not because I want empire or because I want America policing the world, but because this operation fits within a libertarian nationalist framework that too many American libertarians refuse to actually grapple with. So let's start with what actually happened. Okay. In the early morning hours, U.S. forces launched a targeted operation into Caracas. This was not a carpet bombing campaign. This was not Iraq. This was not Afghanistan with millions of civilians dead. This was a precision raid. Special operation forces, air support, intelligence coordination. The objective was singular. Capture Nicolás Maduro, who's been under U.S. federal indictment, by the way, for years on narco-terrorism and drug trafficking charges. Maduro was taken into custody along with his wife. They were flown out of the country, and they're now facing U.S. courts. And that matters because this was framed deliberately as a law enforcement action against a criminal regime, not war for democracy, not nation-building rhetoric, not 20-year occupations, right? The Trump administration's justification was simple. Maduro runs a narco-state. Maduro protects drug networks. Maduro destabilizes the hemisphere. And Maduro's already been indicted. So this wasn't a regime change for vibes, right? This was enforcement. Now let's talk about Trump, right? Because this is where the left and the media loses its mind, right? Trump did not speak like a professor. He spoke like Trump, right? He confirmed the capture. He said the U.S. would temporarily oversee stability. He talked about oil. He talked about drugs. And he talked about results. At one point, he said the United States would run the country temporarily to make sure things don't collapse. And of course, that line sent people into the usual hysterics, right? But here's the thing. Trump was not describing empire, right? He was describing control of a situation to prevent chaos. And unlike the neocons, he did not pair it with a forever timeline, no constitution writing, no $1 trillion reconstruction fantasies. Stabilize, transition, leave. Right, that distinction matters. Now, I want to address my fellow libertarians directly because this is where the argument gets uncomfortable. There is a strain of American libertarianism that treats non-intervention as an absolute moral law. No matter the context, no matter the regime, no matter the consequences, if something happens overseas, the answer is always not our problem, right? And that worldview is tidy, and it is wrong. Right? Liberty does not exist in a vacuum, and sovereignty is not a suicide pact. When a narco state collapses a region, when a dictator floods your country with drugs, when criminal regimes destabilize borders, you are already involved. How many millions of Venezuelan migrants flee to the United States because of the despotism of Maduro and Chavez, right? Pretending that this isn't happening is a fantasy, right? Libertarian nationalism, which I espouse and have created, starts with this premise. The nation exists to protect the liberty of its people. And sometimes that means confronting threats before they metastasize. And this is where Javier Milei matters, because Javier Milei shatters the cartoon version of libertarian foreign policy that most American libertarians have adopted. Milei is not an isolationist. He is not neutral about tyranny, and he is not morally agnostic. When Maduro fell, Javier Milei celebrated. Liberty advances. Viva la libertad, carajo, he wrote. That's not the language of empire. That is the language of a man who understands that liberty has enemies. Milei has been very explicit. Dictatorships in Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, right? These are not cultural quirks. These are criminal systems that crush human freedom, anti-libertarian to their core. And Milei understands something that many American libertarians refuse to say out loud. Sometimes force is required to break entrenched tyranny, not to rule, not to occupy, but to end the communist tyranny. Now let's deal with the legal criticism. Yes, international law people are upset. They're always upset. The same institutions that tolerated Maduro, that tolerated Chavez, that tolerated starvation and repression, they're now very concerned about process, as if process is the most important thing, rather than the outcome of those processes. Here's the question. If the process always leads to a negative outcome, is the process something that needs to be questioned? I mean, here is the reality. International laws are only as moral as the regime that they protect. If international law protects international communism, but doesn't protect international libertarianism, then that international law is invalid, in my opinion. There's nothing so nonsensical as the concept of international law. There is no international law. There never has been. Everybody who acted like there were international laws were all just pretending. Maduro's regime, even under a concept of international law, was still not legitimate. It was a criminal regime. You do not owe deference to a cartel that calls itself a government. Here's this is a long video, but I want you, this is from a Venezuelan inside the country. I want you to hear this.
Okay, as a Venezuelan American, I got some shit to say. My family, my parents, my sister, my extended family, all lost everything. Their work, their savings, their investments, gone. Wiped out by a narco-dictatorship that has held Venezuela in a death grip for over 25 years. And what happened to my family has happened to millions, and yes, millions. The Venezuelan exodus is the second largest displacement crisis on earth after Syria. This is not just a tragedy. It is one of the great humanitarian disasters of our time. But the suffering doesn't end there. This regime has jailed hundreds of political prisoners. Thousands have been murdered simply for speaking out. More than a third of the population has fled. 1/3. Not for better opportunities or for the American dream, but to survive, to live, because staying often means death. And while the world may see Venezuela as a collapsed state, what it is in reality is an occupied one. Our territory, our natural resources, and our institutions have been overrun by hostile foreign powers. Iranian militias, Chinese corporations, Russian intelligence, all exploiting our country with impunity. Venezuela is no longer just a local crisis. It is now a geopolitical threat that endangers the entire Western Hemisphere. It has become a launch pad for an authoritarian expansion in the Americas. And in the midst of all of this, one woman has dared to lead the charge for freedom. Maria Corina Machado. In 2024, against every odd, she led a peaceful democratic uprising that won the election. Her team smuggled physical voting receipts out of the country, hard proof of victory that the regime tried to bury. Her courage has lit a fire in the hearts of millions of Venezuelans desperate to believe that change is still possible. But now some have questioned her decision to dedicate her Nobel Prize to Donald Trump. Okay, I get that. But here's the truth. It was a brilliant strategic move in the global chessboard of politics. Maria Corina is no fool. She knows exactly the kind of man Trump is. She knows how much he campaigned for it, loudly and relentlessly, to win that very same prize. She knows how symbolic and personal that recognition is to him. And precisely because of that, she understood that this gesture might be the thing that keeps his attention focused on Venezuela at a time when U.S. presence and pressure in the Caribbean is rising. She didn't dedicate that award to flatter him. She did it to protect and preserve the one kind of power that could help shift the course of history. Because for her, this isn't about pride. It's not about optics. It's about freedom. And let's be very clear. Maria Corina is not asking for the U.S. to invade Venezuela. She's not campaigning for war. Venezuela is already invaded. It is held hostage by a narco-state, overrun by foreign agents and enemies of democracy, Russians, Iranians, Chinese, all operating freely, weaponizing our land and resources to expand their influence across Latin America. What Maria Corina is calling for, what millions of Venezuelans are praying for, is the support of the only military on earth capable of countering that threat and helping to free our people. This is not imperialism. This is liberation. She's not playing partisan games. She's playing for Venezuela's life. Because this isn't theoretical. This isn't academic. This is life or death. So yes, it is time to honor her bravery, but more importantly, it is time for the world, especially the free world, to recognize what's at stake. The fight for Venezuela is a fight for freedom, for democracy, and for the stability of an entire continent. If we truly care about liberty, human dignity, and peace in the Americas, then Venezuela's fight must matter to all of us. Que viva Venezuela, que viva Maria Corina Machado.
Yeah, I believe him. I believe him. Absolutely, yeah. You do not owe deference to a cartel that calls itself a government. You don't owe sovereignty to narco-terrorists, right? This is not, in my words, this is not a blank check for intervention. This is not a doctrine for invading every bad country. This was unique. A nearby narco state, an indicted leader, direct harms to U.S. interests, a fast operation under 2 hours, a defined objective, and that is the libertarian nationalist test. Limited scope, clear target, strategic interest, and an exit strategy. Like Liberty Tonight over in the chat, Brian Piotr says this morning, I wish we had done a Venezuela operation for Iraq instead of invading. Exactly. Save us trillions of dollars and millions of lives that might have been saved. TLSM over in the chat says, I think the removal of dictator and liberation are great things so long as we give the country back to the people. Sometimes we liberate for the purpose of war, and that is where things get muddy. Great comment. So contrast that, with the endless wars justified by abstract ideas, right? This was not that. And finally, this matters politically because Trump did something no one thought that he would do. He took decisive action without falling into neocon insanity. He didn't outsource it to think tanks. He didn't lecture the world. He just acted. And that's why the reaction to him is so frantic, because this doesn't fit the old boxes. It was not isolationism. It wasn't empire building. It was sovereignty defending itself. So here's the bottom line. Liberty is not passive, right? Nations are not obligated to tolerate criminals. And libertarianism does not mean paralysis. Sometimes history demands action. And this is one of those moments. We're going to be talking to Mylene Salabari about this morning at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. So about 30 minutes from now. She's the host of Cafecito Libre here on the Wake Up America show's For Liberty Network. She's going to talk to us this morning about what it means for Latin America, for the region, and for the future. Thank you very much. Mongoose87 says, I see this the same as UAP. We nabbed a criminal wearing the government as a mask. I'd love to see your thoughts and comments. You can drop them below on the Wake Up America show. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. You can drop them either as a comment or in the chat, or you can always send us a text at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. When you send us a text, I'll be able to respond to them in real time. If you have a question for Mylene Salabaria, we'd love to hear it. Again, you can send them at that phone number as a text line. 573-319-1586 is that text line. We'd love to hear from you this morning on the Wake Up America show. Here we go. Found my research here, my notes. So let's establish what we actually know about what's going on with Venezuela. So Maduro and Celia Flores were captured during a U.S. operation in Caracas and brought to New York. They're being held, and they're expected to face federal charges tied to drug trafficking and narco-terrorism operations. This is according to CBS News. CBS News reports that the operation involved U.S. Special Operations Forces, and they specifically cite Delta Force as the unit involved. Trump has publicly described the U.S. as temporarily being in charge of Venezuela during a transition and emphasized getting oil flowing again. Rubio has signaled that the U.S. is not looking to directly govern Venezuela while continuing pressure measures, including an oil quarantine approach in the transition plan. So, in other words, the administration is describing this as a decisive extraction paired with a stabilization framework and a fast transition out of direct control. Now, that is the operational level, but what is the doctrinal level? Well, that's where Don Rowe comes in. All right, the Monroe Doctrine for normal people was basically America telling Europe, do not colonize the Americas again, and do not try to dominate our hemisphere because we're not going back to being a chessboard for old world empires. It was imperfect. It was sometimes abused. It was sometimes used as cover for interventions that were not defensible. But the core idea was straightforward. The Western Hemisphere is not an open frontier for rival great powers. Now, Trump is taking that historic instinct from the United States and slapping his own brand name on it. So he's been quoted as saying that the Monroe Doctrine has been superseded and that people call the new approach the Don Rowe Doctrine, which is pretty damn hilarious. But that is not just marketing. That is a signal. And that signal is to Beijing, Xi Jinping, Putin in Moscow, a signal to every regional leader flirting with outside patrons. The signal is we're done with passive decline in our own hemisphere. Let's talk about why Venezuela is central to this, right? Venezuela is not just a failed socialist state. It is a geopolitical platform. For years, Maduro has leaned on relationships with U.S. adversaries, especially Russia and China, for money, diplomatic cover, weapons, surveillance tech, and, of course, oil trade channels, right? And this matters because those relationships are not charity from the Chinese government or the Russian government. They are leverage over the United States. So let me translate that. When China invests in Venezuelan oil, it's not just buying oil, it's buying influence. When Russia backs Caracas, it's not because they love the Venezuelan people, it's because they love the idea of an American rival with a foothold in our hemisphere. And the reporting now is extremely clear. China is heavily tied into Venezuelan oil flows. Reuters notes that Chinese firms have invested billions in Venezuela's oil sector since 2016, and China has remained a major customer for Venezuelan crude, including rebranded shipments and debt repayment structures. So this is exactly the kind of entanglement that gives Beijing an incentive to protect the regime. And it gives Beijing a reason to oppose the operation publicly, even if privately they're calculating what it means for their risk exposure. Reuters also reported that China's regulators have urged banks and policy lenders to disclose exposure to Venezuela because they're worried about financial shocks and geopolitical risks. That is the sound of influence meeting reality. Now let's look at Russia. Russia's embassy warned citizens against travel to Venezuela after the U.S. operation, citing the risk of further attacks and instability. Russia is suddenly having to absorb the fact that a key ally just got removed. So while Moscow is going to try and spin this into a broader sphere of influence world where the U.S. focuses on the Western Hemisphere and gives Russia room elsewhere, and that is the danger of this moment. Because if you frame the world as spheres, you can get short-term clarity, but you also can invite copycats. So now let's bring this into the libertarian nationalist lens, right? Because this is where many libertarians kind of get stuck, right? They hear doctrine and they flinch because they assume that it means empire. They assume that it means endless war. They assume that it means nation building. But libertarian nationalism is not empire. Libertarian nationalism is sovereignty with limits. It's recognizing that your government's first duty is the protection of your people and that the global environment affects whether liberty can survive at home. If you cannot control your hemisphere, you cannot control the conditions for your own liberty. Under the national security, the national defense environment that we are facing, if you cannot control your hemisphere, you cannot control your own national defense. Camellia here with a great question, and I will be asking that to our friend Maylene Salabaria this morning when she comes and joins us here in about 25 minutes. She asks, is Maria Machado going to be the next president of Venezuela, or is Trump still mad she got the Nobel Peace Prize? Very funny, Camellia. Had to get the dig in there, huh? Fred Siegel this morning went over to the grift shop this morning and got himself the Join or Die Snake 250 years strong t-shirt. Have you guys seen all the 250th anniversary merch that we dropped in the shop? If you haven't already, help us to unlock that bonus content. We're well on the way now, thanks to frickin' Fred Siegel, who went over and checked out the latest product drops over at forlibertyshop.com. Vam's here. Oops, Cam's here. Over at forlibertyshop.com, we now have the Trump Millet Great Liberators poster as well. Don't you want it? Don't you wish your poster was hot like me? We're going to be... I finally found a new poster that I can put up behind me here instead of this Soviet poster that I've got from World War II, which is a really nice poster. Good morning, CJ. Yes, I've got the Kill the Wolf poster, which is pretty cool, seeing like the Nazi wolf that's being brutally killed. Can you see that on the back of the poster right there? No. So we've got the new Javier Milei Donald Trump Great Liberators poster available at forlibertyshop.com. There you go. Check it out. Help us to unlock that bonus content. Trump Millet, the Great Liberators poster, available at forlibertyshop.com. You can check out also our brand new line of products for kids, Founding Dinos. Did you guys know this is the history that they won't teach you in school? At forlibertyshop.com, we've got the patriotic founding dinos, the history that they won't teach you in schools. History just got a lot cooler. George Washington T-Rex, John Adams Triceratops. And, it doesn't have to make sense because you know that the kids are going to love it anyway. Velocijeff. And all kinds of other great, incredible products. Founding Dinos tees. Check out the Trump Millet Great Liberators posters now in the shop over at forlibertyshop.com. You know you want it. There we go. So if you cannot control your own hemisphere, you cannot control the conditions for your own liberty. In a world where rival powers operate through proxies, energy leverage, and cartel state partnerships, you can be a non-interventionist all day long and still get invaded just indirectly. Right? You get invaded by fentanyl routes, you get invaded by intelligence networks, economic coercion, destabilization, cyber crime, destruction of our resources, Chinese spy balloons flying overhead, and then you sit on your hands because, well, it's not a conventional war, so we can't do anything. We have to be non-interventionist. And that is how great nations get hollowed out. Now, let me add the Javier Milei piece into this one because this is essential, right? Javier Milei is the antidote to the American libertarian caricature that liberty means doing nothing. Milei has publicly aligned himself with Trump's move against Maduro. And me publicly aligning myself with Trump's move has gotten me no end to Chase Olivers and how many other libertarian anarchists or retards, but then I repeat myself, who calling me a neocon because I support this toppling of Maduro. And yet, they don't have the balls to call Javier Milei a neocon. Some do, but that's more of the conspiratard, not serious people who consider themselves to be libertarian thinkers. Is Javier Milei a neocon? I think not. Buenos Aires Times reported that Milei welcomed the capture and aligned publicly with Trump on this one. Another reporting notes that Milei praised the news and elevated his longstanding condemnation of Maduro's narco-state. And this matters because Milei represents a form of libertarianism that is not naive about power. He believes in free markets, private property, deregulation, human liberty. And he also believes that tyrannies are not just different preferences. They are engines of coercions that export chaos. So when Milei celebrates Maduro's fall, it's not a neocon cheerleading for occupation. It is an anti-tyranny instinct rooted in the defense of civilization. Clip that one, Brad. There we go. So that is the libertarian nationalist argument in one line. Liberty has enemies, and enemies do not disappear because you refuse to name them. All right, now let's pull this back even further. What is the China and Russia in our hemisphere angle? All right, it is this. For the last 2 decades, the United States political class has been distracted and divided, and rival powers use that vacuum to move in quietly, economically, through loans, infrastructure projects, energy deals, security cooperation, under the feckless and weak leadership of Democratic presidents like Joe Biden and Barack Obama. Those powers, those great powers, China and Russia, moved into our hemisphere, set up shop, and we did nothing. And Venezuela became one of the most visible outposts of the Chinese and Russian strategy to attack American liberties and to attack us here in our hemisphere. Now, the Atlantic Council analysis on this, which I read last night, explicitly frames this as an opportunity for Washington to translate security preferences into strategic reality, including extra hemispheric powers like China and Russia from meaningful influence in Caracas. So we are stopping the Chinese and the Russians from operating in our hemisphere, which is absolutely our right in our purview. And this is not about colonizing Venezuela. It is about denying hostile great powers a platform in our neighborhood. Because the Western hemisphere, it's not a neutral zone in a great power competition. It is the U.S. strategic rear area. And if you allow your rear to be penetrated, you will pay for it later. Something Chase Oliver should know. Through energy leverage, through intelligence operations, through propaganda networks, through cartel funding, through cyber cooperation, through sanctions evasions channels. In short, everything that makes a modern society fragile, the Chinese and the Russians are exploiting against us. It's war. It's just war waged in a different way. Now, let's talk about the criticisms of this one, because there are many, right? You're going to hear it all day today. They will say that this is a precedent, right? They will say international law. They will say sovereignty. They will say this will embolden China and Russia, right? And yes, some officials abroad are already making that argument. They are. Here's the uncomfortable truth. China and Russia do not need America's position to do what they want. They already act in their own perceived spheres, and they already justify it however they want, right? The real question is not, does America set a precedent? The real question is, does America allow a precedent of weakness to become permanent? Because weakness is a precedent too. If the United States signals that hostile powers can build partnerships with narco-states in our hemisphere with no consequences, that becomes the operating environment. The East comes to the West and it acts with impunity. And in that environment, you don't get peace, you don't get liberty, you get slow suffocation of our rights. Now, here's where the Donroe Doctrine gets kind of dangerous and sort of interesting at the same time, because multiple analysts are already warning that this could be read as a move towards a world organized around spheres of influence. Okay, interesting. How do we respond to that? Well, the Financial Times, FT, they explicitly raised the concern that if the U.S. acts this way in the hemisphere, China and Russia could interpret it as a tacit acceptance of their own dominance elsewhere, like Taiwan and Ukraine and other flashpoints around the world. The Washington Post was reporting that this is kind of a revived 19th century style vision of American power with global implications. Here's the thing. China and Russia were never holding back from operating within their spheres of influence with impunity, and then they were having incursions into our hemispheres, into our spheres of influence. If Russia could have black bagged the leader of Ukraine, Zelensky, overnight, don't you think that they would have done it? Right? It would have saved a lot of lives. They don't have the capability to do it, so they had to engage in a long, protracted war. So the challenge for this administration is to hold two truths at once. Here's the first truth. America has the right and duty to secure its hemisphere from hostile entrenchment. And truth two is that America should not accidentally endorse a world where every great power gets a free hand to crush neighbors, right? That balance is the entire game. And if Trump plays it well, then it becomes a deterrent doctrine. If Trump plays it badly, then it becomes a license doctrine. So what does a libertarian nationalist want here specifically? Number one, a narrow mission definition, right? Capture the criminal leadership, disrupt the cartel state, prevent a vacuum, enable a transition, and then get out. Number two, no blank checks for occupation. Stabilization is not nation building, and temporary control of security nodes is not writing a new constitution. If this mission grows, the support for it collapses. And then number three, we need a serious plan for the China and Russia unwind. We don't need some kind of theatrical purge or just some tantrum publicly. We need a real strategic disentanglement because China will fight to protect their oil channels. Russia is going to fight to protect their prestige and their footholds in the region. We're going to need a plan for this. And the answer is not to pretend that those ties don't exist. The answer is to price the risk and to remove leverage points, right? So that means energy policy, sanctions enforcement, intelligence work, right? That means regional diplomacy, Javier Milei. And sometimes that means, yes, using power surgically, fast, with clear objectives, instead of talking for 10 years while your rivals build networks to use against you. Now, I'm going to give you guys some fresh insight, the kind that you guys can use, that you guys can absolutely use when you have discussions in this life. Thank you for the $10 in Bitcoin, JJ. Somebody went and bought the Trump Milei Great Liberators poster. I have a feeling we're going to sell a lot of those today. Hopefully we got a nice profit margin on those, Brad. And Mylene Salavarria will be joining us here live in about 10 minutes on the Wake Up America show to give her take. And she's asking me if we've sent the Zoom link. We have not sent it yet. I'm sorry, womp womp. I will get that to you in just a few minutes. You say Grenada, I say Grenada. So this operation in Venezuela is kind of a message in three directions. First, it's a message to Latin American elites. If you build a regime that relies on cartels and hostile patrons, you're no longer just a domestic problem. You are a hemispheric security problem. Good. Hope that the message was agreed. Your economic strategy in the hemisphere is not just trade anymore. It's being treated as strategic positioning, and the United States will contest it when they cross a red line. Third, to Russia, your ability to project influence into our hemisphere is not cost-free, and you cannot assume that America will remain passive forever. We will not. And here's the kicker. The message to domestic America. The United States is not just a market. It is a civilization with a strategic perimeter. You can be pro-liberty and still believe in borders, still believe in deterrence, still believe in defending your sphere without becoming an imperialist. This is not a contradiction. This is adulthood. And that brings me back to Javier Milei, because Milei represents a model of libertarian leadership that understands the state must be limited, but it also must be capable. A weak state does not create liberty. It creates a vacuum. And vacuums get filled by gangs, cartels, and foreign patrons. That is what happened in Venezuela. A corrupt regime, a cartel economy, a patronage state, and then outside powers move in to harvest the wreckage. See, Javier Milei's libertarianism, my libertarianism, is not pacifism. It is a moral stance against coercion. So, of course, he and I celebrate when a coercive narco-state loses its grip on power. The American libertarian movement needs to learn that lesson. Non-intervention is not a sacrament. It is a tool, and tools are judged by outcomes. Now, I want to end with the Monroe Doctrine lesson and the Monroe Doctrine warning. The Monroe Doctrine, historically, was a claim of hemispheric independence from European empires. Donroe is Trump claiming the hemisphere as an enforceable strategic priority again. Okay, good. The warning is, do not let doctrine become vanity. Like, doctrine must have limits, or it becomes a trap. If Donroe becomes an excuse to meddle everywhere, it collapses into the same moral mess that discredited past interventions. But if Donroe becomes a narrow hemispheric defense posture focused on denying hostile great power entrenchment, dismantling cartel state platforms, then it can be a stabilizing doctrine. And that is the argument that I am making. Libertarian nationalism is not conquest. It is security for liberty. It's defending your neighborhood so your children are not paying later for your refusal to act now. So when people ask, does Venezuela matter? Why does it matter, right? Here is the answer. Because the Western Hemisphere is the strategic foundation of American liberty. Because China and Russia have been treating our neighborhood like a playground for years, and it's time for it to come to a stop. It's over. Venezuela became a narco state with outside patrons. China and Russia moved into the gap. And in the last 48 hours, the United States signaled that the era of passive drift may be ending. Love to see it. So that is the Donroe Doctrine. Now, the only question left is, will it be enforced with discipline or will it be inflated into folly? We'll leave that up to you, and we'll ask Mylene Salabari about that after the break. Wow, we are so close to unlocking phase 3 of the bonus content today. I hope that you guys are enjoying the show. If so, make sure you click the like button. And if today's your first time watching the Wake Up America show, click the follow button as well. When we get back, we'll have bonus content for you. When we get back, Mylene Salabari joining us live right here on the Wake Up America show as someone who fled communism, to hear her thoughts as a libertarian, a Javier Mileist, if you will, on the Wake Up America show and the 4 Liberty Network.
America's inequality story doesn't add up. Taxes, benefits, and household data make America look more unequal than it is. If you're like most Americans, you get the bulk of your cardio from marching in or fleeing from pitchfork-wielding mobs. These days, those mobs tend to be chasing oligarchs with their fancy castles and grave-robbing sidekicks. Inequality, we are told, is spiraling out of control. But that's wrong. America doesn't actually have an inequality problem. We have a measurement problem. Most of the infuriating headlines about inequality rely on data from the Census Bureau. And when the Census Bureau calculates inequality in the US, it leaves out 2 very important things: taxes and redistribution. The Census Bureau looks at pre-tax income. If you earn $100,000 a year and pay $20,000 in taxes, the Census Bureau counts you as earning $100,000, not the $80,000 you actually take home. That missing $20,000 doesn't vanish. The federal government redistributes it to the lowest quintile of Americans through food stamps, housing vouchers, Medicaid, child tax credits, Section 8 housing subsidies, and dozens of other programs. But almost none of that is factored into inequality statistics. There are over 100 federal programs that each redistribute over $100 million a year. Yet the Census Bureau counts only 8 of them as income. Most state and local transfer payments aren't counted either. In fact, roughly 2/3 of all government transfer payments to individuals and households never enter the inequality data at all, according to the Census Bureau data we calculated. When you add those transfers and benefits back in, the average household in the bottom quintile of earners receives around $40,000 per year in cash and in-kind support.
income that simply disappears from inequality charts. So when people say, tax the rich people to fix inequality, that literally cannot work with how inequality is measured in America. According to our statistics, you could triple taxes on the wealthy and inequality would look exactly the same, assuming the rich didn't flee to Galt's Gulch, Heaton's Hollow, or the Buffet Warren tax dodge zone and water park. What about Europe, you ask, irritatingly? Europe is a nice place. Good cheese, sort of England's chunky sidekick. But American taxation is actually more progressive than in Europe. Wealthy Americans fund a much larger percentage of our government than wealthy European vampires do in their countries. Europeans pay higher taxes not because they pulverize the rich, but because they tax their middle class more heavily and rely far more on sales taxes, which disproportionately impact the poor. If your solution is to force corporations to redistribute profits more evenly, that runs into the same problem. The Census Bureau does not count employer benefits, such as health insurance premiums, dental and vision insurance, or health savings accounts as income. Much of what people call wage stagnation is compensation shifting into benefits that never show up in the data. You can reasonably argue, and I would, that government spends our taxes in stupid ways. Corn subsidies, upward transfers of wealth, military parades. We could also argue that government could better allocate resources to genuinely help people who need it. But that's a spending problem, not a revenue problem. The measurement problems don't end there. When the Census Bureau began tracking household income in 1947, government officials treated women as wifely accessories or house pets, and didn't bother keeping track of individual earnings. Instead, they tracked household income, treating husbands and wives as a single economic unit, a practice they still use today. Since then, women have entered the workforce en masse, and couples increasingly marry within their income brackets. So imagine a lady lawyer earning $100,000 who marries a doctor earning $100,000, and I, a bachelor comedian, also inexplicably earning $100,000. Even though we all earn the same exact amount of income, the Census Bureau would report rampant inequality because my household only makes half of what theirs does. What is actually a pairing phenomenon gets misinterpreted as income inequality. Income statistics are also snapshots in time, not reflections of a medieval caste system. Most people move between income brackets over the course of their lives. My first year out of college, for example, I earned basically nothing and sat in the bottom quintile. Since then, I have schemed, clawed, fought, and seduced my way into higher paying and often legal jobs. While there are exceptions, the vast majority of Americans earn more at 50 than they did at 18. So when looking at the already flawed inequality statistics over the last 60 years, we're not looking at the same poor and rich people. Between the ages of 25 and 60, 3/4 of American households will fall into the top quintile of income earners for at least 1 year of their lives. To be clear, income inequality exists, but once you factor in taxes, transfers, benefits, and mobility, that gap is not as catastrophically chasmic as often portrayed. Imagine there's a button that doubles everyone's real wealth. Houses cost half as much, groceries cost half as much, and your paycheck goes twice as far. Everyone's life improves, but inequality explodes because the rich gain more dollars than the poor. Would you hit that button? I would, because I care more about poverty than inequality. I care more about raising the floor than lowering the ceiling. Patriots, listen up. The sun's out, the shades are on, and the Gulf of America is wide open for business. This summer, don't show up to the beach looking like a landlocked liberal. Gear up with the Gulf of America collection. Towels, tumblers, shirts, hats, fanny packs, because nothing says freedom like cannonballing into liberty with style. Whether you're grilling burgers, catching waves, or just flexing on social media, do it draped in stars, stripes, and pure American greatness. The Gulf of America isn't just a place, it's a lifestyle. Hit for liberty.
Welcome back to the Wake Up America Show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Joining me here in just a moment is someone uniquely positioned to help us understand what this moment in American history actually means. We're so grateful to have my next guest, who will be Mylene Salavarria. She's the host of the upcoming show Cafecito Libre right here on the For Liberty Network. She focuses on Latin America through the lens of liberty, culture, and lived experience. And that matters because too much of the commentary that you're going to see on Venezuela comes from people like me who have never lived under or near these regimes. You know, what just happened under Nicolás Maduro is not an abstract foreign policy debate. It has real consequences for Venezuela, for the region, and for millions of people who fled socialism and narco-state corruption. Mylene has been following the political shifts across Latin America, including the ripple effects of leaders like Javier Milei and the growing rejection of left-wing authoritarianism. So we're going to bring her in right now to help us separate wishful thinking from hard reality. Mylene, welcome back to the show. Happy New Year. It's so lovely to see you.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Hello, it's so good to be back here. And man, what a comeback we got after the holidays.
Mylene, don't act too excited here because isn't this a big government pro-war interventionist neocon thing that the president of the United States has done? Are you a neocon for supporting this? Am I a neocon? Is Javier Milei a neocon for overthrowing this one? Let's get the accusations out of the way first.
Yeah, I have to tell you that I tried to prepare for the show when you called me a few notes, but I was like, no, just leave it at it. This is going to be like raw life experience because as I was mentioning before we got into the studio, I haven't slept much in the last 48 hours. And it's something that is dearly close to, obviously, my life experience as a communism survivor, my family, people that I hold very dear in my life that are Venezuelans who escape and live this, in their own skin and game. I wanted to take a few seconds before I get started and before we get into the mental gymnastics of everything that has been happening with the experts in the last 48 hours, to take a minute to give my most profound gratitude to the American groups that did what they did in this surgical operation in Venezuela. You have no idea how grateful we are for what they did, the way that they did it, the way that they took action into something that should have been done decades ago, and the way that you're going to be impacting the lives of a lot of people, not only Venezuelans, that live under communist rule. I want to say thank you. Gracias, and how grateful we are that nobody was harmed, that we didn't have any casualties, and that the military of this country demonstrated that they are really the best in the war. That has to be the opening of any conversation when we talk about this topic.
Well, we paid for it, so you're welcome.
I paid for it too, so I'm very glad of having a good return on my investment, at least on that one.
It's about time the government did something to overthrow communism, but let's talk about what this means. Well, where does the legitimacy come from for this one? Most people probably don't follow Venezuelan politics. Is Nicolás Maduro a duly elected democratic leader of a country where he was elected by a popular vote? Or
hell no, he's not. And anybody who has one of these devices in their hands should know that by now. All the information and all the statistics and everything, including testimonials of people who in Venezuela paid with their life for it, should know by now that Maduro is not the legitimate president of Venezuela, that he stole the elections in 2024. There is even paper documentation that was, a lot of people were able to take out of Venezuela, including Maria Corina Machado and a lot of people in her team, to prove how they treat the elections. So whoever at this point in 2026 is calling him President Maduro Venezuela president, I have a little tip of advice. Read the freaking room. Do some reading on the internet, because that is not the case. There is absolutely no reason to keep using that argument at all anymore.
So you say that he stole the election. So talk to us a little bit about his legitimacy. What was the story there? And who is this Maria Corina Machado? Most people probably don't know who she is. Trump is saying that he probably won't have her be installed because I'm reading the Wall Street Journal this morning that they're saying that they're going to choose his vice president, she's an avowed socialist, just like Maduro, and has been strongly condemning the attacks. Doesn't sound very good to me as somebody to take over after Maduro. So break this all down for us.
Yeah, let's unpack it a little bit, because there are two things here that we need to talk about. Number one is like the background story of why Maduro it's an imposed communist dictator, narco-terrorist who stole elections in 2024. And number two, what is the big picture of the United States foreign policy move with the transition that is starting to happen? In the first part, yes, back in 2004, even going back in time, Venezuelans made the big mistake of falling for the promises of hope and change that Hugo Chavez put for them, in the electoral process. So yes, Hugo Chavez used the votes to impose socialism in Venezuela. And by the time they opened their eyes, it was too late. It goes right in line with that saying that we know that you can vote your vote into socialism, but you literally have to shoot your way out of any form of collectivism. After that, when Chavez died, with his Cuban counselors and the Communist Party coaches that he has always had directing, every single move from Havana, they had already picked up Maduro as the successor of Chavez, pretty much like what happened in Cuba when Fidel Castro died, and this clown that nobody knew who was appointed president of the island. Exactly the same process. Then what happens when the next cycle of elections comes in? I mean, the dictatorship, the repression, and everything was already way on the way in Venezuela when this election happened. In 2024, the opposition won. Maria Corina Machado won and Edmundo won, and they stole the elections. They stole all the documentation from the electoral booth. And then when people realized that happened, Venezuelans took the streets. College students went out to protest. They cry to this new, minted in the last 24 hours international law and foreign policy experts. They cry for help to denounce that Maduro and his group had stole the elections, and nobody did anything. Nobody said a pip. The college students and your average regular Venezuelan took the streets and protesting in Caracas, and you know what happened? Maduro and the military got the tanks out. They used the snipers to shoot college students in the head. They used tanks and ran over the protesters that were marching on the streets. And don't take my word for it. Do your freaking Googles on the internet, and you're gonna see all those testimonies, the pictures, the videos, the testimonies of how many political prisoners and dissidents were slammed into the helicoid and they were killed inside. That's the biggest political prison in one of the biggest hills in the middle of Caracas.
You heard the lady.
That's what happened.
You heard the lady. Do your Googles on the internets and find out. Maylene Salabara joining us live here on the Wake Up America show. She's a Cuban refugee who fled to the United States, and she's sharing her point of view with us this morning on the black bagging of Nicolás Maduro. The last 48 hours has been a great debate over the question of international law. Maylene Salabari, people are accusing Donald Trump of violating international law. How do you respond to that?
I have many words, but not many. They're not very ladylike for a show. So I think that I'm going to try to explain it with a little bit of different alternatives. Okay. I think it's BS. It is BS. And you don't need to have a PhD in political science and foreign policy to understand and see the big picture of the master foreign policy move that the current administration implemented with this case of Venezuela. I'm telling you, Austin, I am surprised. I never thought that it was going to be so masterfully crafted, even though I might be a little bit biased because obviously Marco Rubio is the Cubanito born and raised in Miami biggest proud of the Cuban American exile and refugee community. But I have to tell you that the way that they implemented this, and let me tell you something that started with previous administrations, they realized that we as Americans, we don't want our best and brightest and younger being, killed and dying in foreign wars, in government changes where we have probably no business dealing with unless we have a direct responsibility of protecting American properties, which is one of the few, constitutionally approved reasons why we should go into a military conflict. I think the masterful move behind this strategy started when back, I think it was 1999 or 2000, early 2000s. It was during the previous administrations that Nicolás Maduro and the Venezuelan government was classified by the United States as a narco-terrorist institution, and then they started singling out all the top leaders of this mob, because that's what they are. They are a communist cartel. There is no other way to explain it. They started doing all these designations in a way that from the legal standpoint of the United States legal framework, the executive branch is already authorized to do that. The guy has, I don't know how many charges indicted in the United States courts for many, many years. So just to put it simple, if you look at it, what they did was a law enforcement operation to arrest someone that was considered or is considered a narco-terrorist criminal that was indicted by, the United States legal system, and the guy had an arrest order hanging over his head. That's the way that it was. And I think it's one of the few cases that, in my limited knowledge, I recognize I've been only studying and working with this for the 25 years that I have been in this country. My limited knowledge of the foreign policy moved in the United States, this has probably been the most effective and surgical, masterfully executed type of operation. The only ones, and I know we have been talking about this in previous shows when we talk about foreign policy in Latin America, in many other forums. It's very close to what they did with Noriega in Panama. And I think the other one that I can explain, or I can remember in my lifetime, I was very young when that happened, it was what happens in Granada. I was a kid and I was still in Cuba, and they literally kicked the rear ends of the failed Cuban army also in a matter of a week. They literally ran out of the island. So I think that now this is what we saw this weekend. It's like the 2025 better plan, better supported by technology version of those operations that I have seen in Latin America. And frankly, if we think about all the wars and all the military operations that we have been financing with our tax dollars, they should have done the same in all the other cases after 9/11. There was absolutely no need to be 20 years in any country in the Middle East, risking and wasting the life of bright Americans and the monies that we paid in taxes to fund the military complex, when something like this could have been done with the same background. So again, when I look into this, it's like, I am beyond pleasantly surprised. I have told you and your audience many times before that when it comes to politics and politicians, I tend to say that I'm like capsually optimistic. Like, yeah, I'm kind of like happy and getting excited, but not too much, because again, I don't trust the government and I don't trust politicians. But in this case, I have to tell you that I am just like, wow. I mean, they literally exceeded my expectations.
I have to say I agree, but not all people who call themselves libertarians like we do agree. As a matter of fact, two men who I have great respect for and admire, Thomas Massey and Senator Rand Paul, are calling out this strike. They're saying that this is unconstitutional, that there's no argument in favor of the United States conducting this kind of an operation. Justin Amash, who I consider a friend, who is, I've supported in the past, he has supported me in the past. I have nothing but nice things to say about him. He is also calling this out as unconstitutional and illegal. So what should we say to our fellow libertarian friends, Mylene, if we want to have a respectful conversation and not just sort of like give them the bird? What kind of argument would someone like yourself, or should someone like myself, make to justify something like this if it seems to violate libertarian principles as stated by our most popular elected representatives? How would you say?
I have to tell you that even in those specific cases that you mentioned, I feel exactly like you, frankly disappointed. Even back in 2021, when the July riots happened in Cuba, we begged Thomas Massie to take the side of the Cuban opposition, and he voted no in the resolutions that were brought to Congress. So I feel the same level of disappointment that you and many other liberty-loving people feel. But when I think about this conversation, and this is something that I have been arguing nonstop, in person, face-to-face, with a lot of people in the last 2 days, is like liberty, principle, they do not exist in a vacuum. You need to literally land on planet Earth and put your foot on the ground. You need to touch grass. You need to look around you and check in with the reality of human beings living under the oppression and the yoke of communist narco-states like is happening in Venezuela, in Cuba, and Nicaragua. And at the same time, for me personally, it's heartbreaking because I'm telling you, it is public figures that I deeply admire. It is personal friends, colleagues, people that I consider mentors and guides in my career and political advocacy in this country. And it's deeply personally disappointed because two things could be true at once. Heck, 10, 20 things could be true at once. But I think that in a situation like what is happening with Venezuela, we need to land on Earth, and we need to think about human beings. We need to be decent human beings first. We need to understand that you cannot judge the reality of a country like Cuba, Venezuela, or Nicaragua from the comfort of your first world life in Washington, D.C. You cannot be advocating for international law and constitutional principle from the comfort of your air-conditioned office in Washington, D.C., or any place in the United States or Europe, when that same narco-communist regime in Venezuela has prompted an immigration refugee crisis that goes over 8 million people. So you care about your constitutional laws and your views of international law, but you don't care about the individual rights of the political prisoners in Venezuela, of the more than 18,000 people?
Well, they would say, Maylene, they would say that is a foreign country's problem and it's not America's problem to solve, that is their issue. But talk about this from the question of national defense, because Russia and China were operating in Venezuela, essentially using it as something of a client state, were they not?
It's exactly. So it's not only national defense, it's even the defense of, the nearly $12 billion in American properties that they took and they still have not paid the rightful owners for. So it's like a dual layer that all this noise on the internet is ignoring on purpose. It's not only that you have one standard of the proper role of government and what freedom and constitutionality should be for you, and another one for us because we're in the third world and because we're there to survive communism. It's also the layer of the national defense. It's been, again, overly proved by now that the axis between Venezuela, Iran, China, with their mandatory layover in Cuba as a mediator, has been proven like for the longest time. And at some point, you need to understand that you cannot always be as a country and as a society the one that puts the other cheek. You need in the whole environment of foreign policy, you need to look at the region that is closest to you and which one is that one? It's Latin Americans and your neighbors in the South. It's like embracing a 2026 version of the Monroe Doctrine. No, you're not going to be willingly taking the first step to create military involvement and wars anywhere, but don't come and touch my interests or destabilize, the area or the region where we are, because then that becomes a problem. And then it's only a matter of time before you start having the problems in the borders, the human trafficking, the sexual trafficking. It's just outrageous. There are so many examples that we could use to argue this, from the high horse judgment of what is happening, that again, People are just arguing this because
one of the things I think is really important in this conversation is that non-interventionism has to be a two-way street, meaning that they have to not be messing with us if they don't want us to be messed with by them. But the problem with that understanding, Mylene, is you realize that they're never going to leave us alone. They're never going. They're never going to not intervene. They're never going to not intervene in our affairs. China is not going to stop sending spy balloons across our country, violation of our airspace. They're never going to stop screwing with our infrastructure. They're never going to stop trying to destabilize South American countries because they know that creates instability in our region, and that those migrants and refugees become a strain on our population. They're going to continue to do that. So the only response that seems to make any sense, even from the most libertarian perspective, from the most isolationist perspective, you still have to say we have to respond to this because they're not fighting. They're fighting warfare, but not conventional warfare. They're not bombing our cities. They're using computers to try and destroy the infrastructure that our tax dollars have been. But we're coming up on the end of this one. Mylene, some people might say, maybe you can be objective about this one. Maybe you can't be objective about this one. But from your most objective standpoint of this, not as necessarily just like a Cuban refugee, someone who fled communism, but from your own, from an objective perspective, give us your final words on this overthrowing of Maduro. Could it be something that turns out into a nation building exercise? Is it a one and done? Where do you see this going?
I think it's gonna be also like a very limited strategy, again, very similar to what happened in Panama. I know you mentioned it earlier, and we're not going to have time to dive into details with it, but there is a transition in place. There is we can have like a whole other show thinking about it. I don't think that this operation is going to leave Maria Corina Machado out of the picture. It's just that simply you need, when you are in a situation like a dictatorship, an authoritarian regime that is known to kill people on the streets when they go out to protest, you cannot just bring the people that won the elections and don't have any power in the current structure yet. You need to be smarter than them, working to a transition, which I am pretty sure is what Secretary Marco Rubio and President Trump are already laying out, where they are going to get all these other leaders in Venezuela and tell them, you're going to help me do this transition, you're going to help me move the most radical areas of the Chavismo that is still in power, and we're going to do this transition, and if you don't do it, then we're going to have another Delta Force doing, a quick Uber run to pick you up, and because you are already in the list of indictments in the U.S. courts for the same narco trafficking charges. So I think, again, it was a masterful move. It's not going to be solved overnight. There is going to be a transition. I do not think, I might be wrong, but I do not think that this is going to be a nation building exercise that is going to last 20 years like happened in the Middle East or anything like that. I think the advantage is that Venezuela has an organized opposition with a clear leadership that already have a guide of what they want to do when they're able to transition into the country and do democratic elections again. I don't think it's going to be what we have seen in foreign policy and foreign wars with other countries before. And that kind of give me hope. Again, I think it was long overdue. And I think that even beyond everything that we can discuss about, humanitarian help, about whether there is U.S. property involved, whether it's the oil or not, what the heck, what if it's about the oil? I mean, the Venezuelans are telling you, from their country, what if it's about the oil? We don't care. We just want to get rid of these narco-communists and be able to rebuild our country again. Above all of that, Austin, I think the geopolitical move in the region is the most important priority for the United States. Like you were saying, I do not agree with unnecessary wars or military involvement anywhere, but I do think that it has to be like that mantra that we teach our kids. Is like, I'm not going to start a fight, but if you come and mess up with me, you may as well bet that I'm going to end it.
Damn right.
And it's going to be like that. I think that's the bigger and more important picture. And whoever says otherwise, and again, we can argue the morality of it until the cows come home. I truly, personally believe the geopolitical significance of this is beyond what your average commentator can understand. Destroying that axis of power and infiltration that is connecting Iran, the Middle East, Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and the idiot from Colombia. I think that's the most important part, and that's what's going to guarantee a peaceful environment for the United States.
I agree. Mylene, we got to run. Where can people follow you online quickly?
More details, just find me on X. Just write down my weird last name. You're going to find me right away. There's so much statistics and so many testimonials that we won't have time to discuss here, but you can go there. You can check it out. There are going to be a few of op-ed pieces going into more details with these topics that we talked today. So if you follow me there, everybody can have access to that information.
Amen. Mylene Salavarria, we love you. We can't wait to see your new show coming up soon, Cafecito Libre. If they want to get in touch with you, also they can also visit our Discord at forlibertynetwork.com. Happy New Year, Mylene, and congratulations.
Happy New Year.
Congratulations to all your Venezuelan friends. Take care.
Yes, thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. We still got a little more show to go. Before we end, we did unlock all 3 phases of the bonus content, and you know what that means. That means that it's time for us to play the Great Grift Off. And after that, a quick little run through our 3rd phase of the bonus content, which is our show and tell segment today. So let's play the Great Grift Off first. Bam, 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 bam. Everybody who wants to play can play, and we're going to play to win. Guess the brand today. Test your brand knowledge. If you want to play the game, all you got to do is go to crowdparty.app. That's crowdparty.app. Crowdparty.app. Join us now live. We're going to play a game on your phones at home. Everybody is welcome to play. There's the code that you see on the screen, 96753, and that will put you into the game. So go to crowdparty.app right now. Visit the website. Go to crowdparty.app. Type in that secret code that you see on your screen. And if you're nervous, don't be nervous. It's simple. It's easy. We're all just going to play a game on our mobile devices at home together. And if you win a real prize from our shop. So visit forlibertyshop.com, or excuse me, crowdparty.app. Excuse me, I'm so used to saying my own website. Visit crowdparty.app. Type in that code that you see on your screen. Everybody who's watching us live is eligible to play. It's a lot of fun. We're going to play Guess the Brand today. Guess the brand. Go to crowdparty.app. That's crowdparty.app. We've got 7 players right now. We can have up to 50. Everybody is welcome to join. I'm going to hit the 30-second countdown. That means you'll have 30 seconds to get in the game. Once you hear the Squid Game music, the 30-second countdown has begun. If you would like to join the game, go to crowdparty.app. We now have 30 seconds to get as many people in the game as possible. We had 9, but somebody dropped. Get back in there. Go to crowdparty.app, type in that secret code 96753. There we go. 9 out of 50 players. Bernie Sanders has joined. Luke Sacker has joined. 1 second left, and let's begin. Here we go. Guess the brand. Zoom, Discord, or Google Meets. That's a good brand. Interesting. Zoom, 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 zoom. Oh, yeah. Guess the brand. Forbes, Apple, or Walt Disney? Apple. Everybody got that one. Nice and easy. Guess the brand. Heinz, Diesel, or YouTube? You guys are going to get all of these. And some, I assume, are good people.
I'm gonna come.
They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists.
Oh, sorry.
Would you shut up, man?
Gays, straight, men, women, folks with disabilities. Nothing. Racist.
Hell no! Hell no! We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning. And you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much. And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more. We're going to win some.
We need to build a wall, and it has to be built quickly.
The Epstein Island.
I'm going to come.
They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists.
I'm going to come. Get him out of here. Get out.
This is it. Last round. Here we go. Guess the brand. Is it PayPal, American Express, or Visa? This is it. Last round. Siggy's mom. She's got it going on. Siggy, with Siggy's mom, we've got a special gift for you today. A special gift for you today. And we still have the show and tell part, phase 3, the bonus content, which I'm going to have to do like a quick 30-second commercial and come back. But Siggy's mom, send us a text. We are going to send you a beautiful George Washington smoking coin necklace today. So Siggy, send us a text at 573-319-1586. Say, hey, it's Siggy's mom. And send us your name and address where you want the Smokin' George Washington coin sent. Siggy, we will send it to you. Congratulations. You are the winner. And I'm going to take a brief little commercial break, guys. And when we come back, I will have my show and tell segment for you. Sound good? Be right back. And then the show's over. It's going a little long today. I hope you don't mind.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama!
All right. Welcome back. Here we go. Some of you may know this story. Some of you may not. This is the infamous garbage gun. And for today's bonus content for our show and tell, I'll tell you a brief little story about this one. This pistol I purchased as a magnificent replica of George Washington's dueling pistol that he received actually as gifts from someone who cared deeply about him and wanted him to be able to defend himself with these marksman's pistols. This pistol I purchased at Mount Vernon in George Washington's home somewhere around 2013. And when I purchased this gun, I originally bought it for myself. It sat on my shelf for a number of years. People would ask about it. It was kind of a nice little conversation piece. And then when I ran for president of the United States and we were going to the presidential convention, I brought this with me because I thought to myself, well, you know, you might win, you might lose, but win or lose, I think you're going to need George Washington's gun. Now, this gun I carried with me after I had lost the presidential nomination. I took it with me up there onto the stage and brought it with me as a symbolic gesture of appreciation for the person who was going to receive my support, my respect, and my gun. It's a working but non-firing replica. And, you know, at the time it cost around $100. So, you know, a nice gift, not like anything magnificent or extravagant like a real gun or something, but just, you know, a really nice, you know, heavy, meaty, working replica. So I took it with me to the presidential nominating convention, and it was President's Day on the day of the nominating convention in 2016. So what better gift to give for someone's support, respect, and their gun? Well, Gary Johnson did not take kindly to the fact that I refused to endorse his vice presidential pick. Gary Johnson's pick was Massachusetts Governor Bill Weld. And because of that, Gary Johnson felt slighted, and the gift that I had given him as a show of my support was unceremoniously tossed in the garbage. Well, my supporters saw him do this, and they fished the gun out of the trash and brought it to me with tears in their eyes. Noting that he had disrespected the gift of George Washington's pistol. So there you have it. That is the story. You can actually, that story is still archived on Fox News, but this is a piece of history. They tried to buy the gun back from me. They offered me $800, then they offered me $2,000, and then they said, name your price, Austin. I said, well, no, I think I'm going to keep it because it's now the most valuable gun I own, despite the fact that it isn't a firing replica. So that's show and tell. Thank you guys so much for unlocking the bonus content. Hope you enjoyed the show. And we'll see you again, right back again here tomorrow on the Wake Up America show and the 4 Liberty Network.
America's inequality story doesn't add up. Taxes, benefits, and household data make America look more unequal than it is. If you're like most Americans, you get the bulk of your cardio from marching in or fleeing from pitchfork-wielding mobs. These days, those mobs tend to be chasing oligarchs with their fancy castles and grave-robbing sidekicks. Inequality, we are told, is spiraling out of control. But that's wrong. America doesn't actually have an inequality problem. We have a measurement problem. Most of the infuriating headlines about inequality rely on data from the Census Bureau. And when the Census Bureau calculates inequality in the US, it leaves out two very important things: taxes and redistribution. The Census Bureau looks at pre-tax income. If you earn $100,000 a year and pay $20,000 in taxes, the Census Bureau counts you as earning $100,000, not the $80,000 you actually take home. That missing $20,000 doesn't vanish. The federal government redistributes it to the lowest quintile of Americans through food stamps, housing vouchers, Medicaid, child tax credits, Section 8 housing subsidies, and dozens of other programs. But almost none of that is factored into inequality statistics. There are over 100 federal programs that each redistribute over $100 million a year. Yet the Census Bureau counts only 8 of them as income. Most state and local transfer payments aren't counted either. In fact, roughly 2/3 of all government transfer payments to individuals and households never enter the inequality data at all, according to the Census Bureau data we calculated. When you add those transfers and benefits back in, the average household in the bottom quintile of earners receives around $40,000 per year in cash and in-kind support. Income that simply disappears from inequality charts. So when people say, tax the rich people to fix inequality, that literally cannot work with how inequality is measured in America. According to our statistics, you could triple taxes on the wealthy and inequality would look exactly the same, assuming the rich didn't flee to Galt's Gulch, Heaton's Hollow, or the Buffet Warren tax dodge zone and water park. What about Europe, you ask, irritatingly? Europe is a nice place. Good cheese, sort of England's chunky sidekick. But American taxation is actually more progressive than in Europe. Wealthy Americans fund a much larger percentage of our government than wealthy European vampires do in their countries. Europeans pay higher taxes not because they pulverize the rich, but because they tax their middle class more heavily and rely far more on sales taxes, which disproportionately impact the poor. If your solution is to force corporations to redistribute profits more evenly, that runs into the same problem. The Census Bureau does not count employer benefits, such as health insurance premiums, dental and vision insurance, or health savings accounts as income. Much of what people call wage stagnation is compensation shifting into benefits that never show up in the data. You can reasonably argue, and I would, that government spends our taxes in stupid ways. Corn subsidies, upward transfers of wealth, military parades. We could also argue that government could better allocate resources to genuinely help people who need it. But that's a spending problem, not a revenue problem. The measurement problems don't end there. When the Census Bureau began tracking household income in 1947, government officials treated women as wifely accessories or house pets, and didn't bother keeping track of individual earnings. Instead, they tracked household income, treating husbands and wives as a single economic unit, a practice they still use today. Since then, women have entered the workforce en masse, and couples increasingly marry within their income brackets. So imagine a lady lawyer earning $100,000 who marries a doctor earning $100,000, and I, a bachelor comedian, also inexplicably earning $100,000. Even though we all earn the same exact amount of income, the Census Bureau would report rampant inequality because my household only makes half of what theirs does. What is actually a pairing phenomenon gets misinterpreted as income inequality. Income statistics are also snapshots in time, not reflections of a medieval caste system. Most people move between income brackets over the course of their lives. My first year out of college, for example, I earned basically nothing and sat in the bottom quintile. Since then, I have schemed, clawed, fought, and seduced my way into higher paying and often legal jobs. While there are exceptions, the vast majority of Americans earn more at 50 than they did at 18. So when looking at the already flawed inequality statistics over the last 60 years, we're not looking at the same poor and rich people. Between the ages of 25 and 60, 3/4 of American households will fall into the top quintile of income earners for at least 1 year of their lives. To be clear, income inequality exists, but once you factor in taxes, transfers, benefits, and mobility, that gap is not as catastrophically chasmic as often portrayed. Imagine there's a button that doubles everyone's real wealth. Houses cost half as much, groceries cost half as much, and your paycheck goes twice as far. Everyone's life improves, but inequality explodes because the rich gain more dollars than the poor. Would you hit that button? I would, because I care more about poverty than inequality. I care more about raising the floor than lowering